This is the Graphic Rise Show, episode 41, Queen of the Ring, featuring director Ash Avildsen and star Emily Bett Rickards.
Listen, Mildred, you gotta watch yourself in the clinches out there. I don't trust this referee.
You don't want to be a waitress no more? Who do you think you are, huh?
You won't know me by my full name.
Sometimes I come and get your bill.
Sometimes, sir, I want you to know I'm a big fan. What's it take for you to train me how to wrestle?
Who'd pay to see you?
Well, people with good taste. That's who.
Let's give it a shot.
A woman ain't got no business in the ring with a man.
A woman ain't got no business where?
I think you and I should be partners.
Whole lot of opportunity out there for us.
What's best for business?
Give the audience what they deserve.
New Jersey law is keeping her from fighting in the ring.
Together, we gotta break walls down in this country.
Did I hear that right?
Fight for real. No script. Shoot from the hip. A heroic, single mother fighting a big bad wolf. Whatever that story is, there won't be a ticket to be found.
Sometimes, no more waiting. Sometimes, you gotta climb that hill. Sometimes.
Producing the champion of the world,
Sometimes, get on, bud.
Welcome to the Graphic Rise Show. Our guests today are director Ash Avildsen and star Emily Bett Rickards from the Mildred Burke biopic Queen of the Ring. So thank you for joining us today.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having us.
Right, our first question then, I'll start with Ash and then move it across, because some of these are sort of a bit for each of you, but you can both probably comment on them because of how it is really.
We'll wrestle for them.
Why Mildred Burke? What made you, Ash, as director? Why Mildred Burke? Because as a wrestling fan myself, she is someone I know of through my wrestling history, but she isn't someone I'd imagine most fans would pull her name out of the air.
Yeah, I mean, from a Hollywood studio sense, it was probably, something that may have not gotten made for who knows how long because she's not well known. So it's much harder to get like a biopic about a not incredibly famous, figure off the ground. But I just fell in love with the book that Jim Ross originally told me about, and I read it, and I was just so touched and inspired and entertained. And I'd never heard of her, and none of my friends who were also very, big wrestling fans and followers, no one really knew her story. And so I felt a very, kind of deep, duty to the world and to just fans and to her and her legacy to try and figure out how to get it told. I just absolutely love her story. And I always tell people, to definitely read the book if they enjoy the movie at all, just because there's so much story, and we tried to put 20 plus years of fascinating history in a 2-hour movie, which is no easy feat.
And Emily, same for you then. Were you aware of Mildred Burke? And I imagine as an actor, you'll be researching into it. Were you aware? What did you find as you started on this journey?
Well, one of the main reasons that I was so pulled to Mildred is that after reading Ash's wonderful script for the first time, I turned to my partner and was like, have you ever heard of this woman? And neither of us had. And I thought it was a disservice to myself that I didn't know, and that more people like me weren't going to know who she was, and I was just so drawn to her, and I wanted to tell her story. And I immediately dove in, before I had even talked to Ash. I was full of deep Wikipedia, deep web, Reddit, anything that had anything on her life. I had the book on the way to me within like 20 minutes after closing the script. Regardless of, knowing if I had the opportunity to, get to play her and become such good friends with her, I was very drawn to her from the minute I heard of her story.
So, Ash, for yourself, doing a wrestling movie, was there any pressure as the family DVD shelf already had Rocky and the Karate Kid on there? So, was there
I
any
mean,
pressure of like adding a wrestling movie to
just a
that?
touch, just a touch of self-inflicted pressure. Yeah. The big difference, outside of course, era of and time and budget and all that. This was, based on a true story. So Rocky and Karate Kid, you have the liberties of just writing, anything that's not, you don't have to worry about honoring anything that's like factual. So it's a lot easier to kind of just do whatever you think works for the script. We obviously took creative liberties with Queen of the Ring, but there was definitely like a real, kind of thick blueprint of like, this is what happened in her life. These are, the most, critical moments in the first 20 years of wrestling for her. So we tried to stay grounded in what we knew from the book and from her manuscript. But sure, I mean, it's hard not to either from an audience member or from myself be like, oh, like there's a level of expectation here. So, but again, it's very different. It's period and it's a true story and it's pro wrestling, but blurring the lines with the shoot matches and everything. But yeah, I'm really proud of the movie we made.
Nothing like a little self-inflicted pressure to get the movie made, hey?
Yeah,
I don't like it.
So, certainly on the pressure back on to you now, and Emily. You're talking now. You've got Mildred Burke. You've researched it. You've looked into it, and obviously there's the wrestling that's going on in the ring, but she's also grappling with a lot of things outside the ring, even before wrestling, and then when she starts wrestling, like including the whole female wrestling ban, things like that, and obviously the emotional and physical stuff that's going on in her life. How that's a lot to take in for one character sometimes. How did you sort of get to grips with that?
Well, it was her truth, and I think we even pulled back on, like Ash said, we couldn't fit everything into her script and into her story of what we were trying to tell. And Ash also made a very, I think, beautiful decision to sort of depict her in the brighter light, no matter how much adversity she was fighting, which is, I think, actually shows her inner propeller more than what was outside of her. She had to be motivated. She had to have this kind of unwavering dream, pillar, belief in herself. And that's not to say I think that she was immune to self-doubt. I just think that she knew it was important for her and her story, regardless if she was thinking about, the future of women. I think sometimes she's just trying to get through it, but she knew that's what was true for her. And because Mildred was that person, yes, it was challenging to play her, but only because the challenge is what kind of made her who she was. And that brings her truth to the surface, like to the cellular level. And when things are driven with so much purpose, I don't know, it's easier sometimes. Like, you want to make your bed in the morning because you want it made, but you don't want to make it. Really hard to make your bed, has a real dream, purpose that she's going to wrestle, use her body in this way. Nothing's going to get in her way. She's going to get a little bit extra power to get her to the mark,
Oh, definitely.
Who knows?
I love what you're saying because I made a note here because I've watched it a few times now, as I was saying just now. But I think the first time I watched it, I'll be honest, it was like a kind of, and I know some wrestling fans will be like that. They'll go, "Wait a minute, that happened then, that didn't happen then, that happened then," and you can get caught up in all that. But then I think the second time I watched it, I got it was like the emotional truth of it. And
Hmm.
like you say, you can take how many years and push it into like an amount of time. And I got that then, and I think you brought that out brilliantly. Because again, for someone who is portrayed so strongly, and and obviously the effort you put in yourself to bring that to the screen, I can imagine
Yeah.
there could be a
Well, I
whole
think
podcast on your diet and weight routines and all that for that. But the
it's an
actual thing
interesting
that comes
concept.
out of that, yeah,
Yeah. To think like Mildred's out there living her life, not knowing it's going to become a story, right? And then Ash comes along decades after she's passed, and it's like, no, this is a story that needs to be told. And as a storyteller, your only job and your only want is to affect people. So using that emotional communication that you have is really the only purpose because it's the only thing you take away from a movie. It's the only thing you take away and go call your mom right after you've seen it, go call your best friend or think about your, dad who's passed or your grandmother, whoever you think of, you've thought of someone. And that means you've related to it and taken a little something of this magic that's going to affect you in your life and hopefully make you do good with it.
definitely, yeah, the inspiration is definitely there, and that's what I was going to say. What challenges and Ash did you have? Because there's always a book to a film challenge, and whatever genre it might be, and there's always something that gets missed, and people will moan or go on about it. But for yourself though, getting that emotional truth in, as we just talked about, is it really does shine through that film because this could have been in a different person's hands. This could have been a much more darker, edgier film or a brutal film in some ways. If you know the story, I don't want to ruin anything for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. But you know what I mean. So how did you feel with like as you're sort of picking and choosing, I guess, what parts you're going to put in? What was that? What was your sort of process with that?
I mean, we're definitely living in a time where in cinema, like we're living a kind of like almost like back like in the 70s. Like people are really into the like dark, devastating, stories and endings, and kind of like ending a lot of movies just in a downer tone of you're kind of like gutted with just the darkness of a tale. And I just with Mildred's story, there's a much harder R and a much more depressing ending um,
Hmm.
version you could tell. And I just when I read the book, I go, there's a way this can be a PG-13 inspirational true story that 12-year-old boys and girls can watch, and it gives them a taste of the darkness of life, and that there are there's nuance to family and success and career and all those things, but like we'll hopefully leave them inspired and motivated and filled with some serotonin and dopamine after they're watching it to go out and pursue whatever they're passionate about, and to find the confidence and the light and the darkness of the world, because the Billy Wolfe and the the oppressive, abusive nature of gatekeepers and men in power and all those things. I mean, that's been going on since the start of time. And as you see the state of the world today, it ain't slowing down at all. It's actually very kind of dystopian and sad in so many ways what's going on around the world right now. So with Mildred's story, I took it upon myself to be like, I just want it to be PG-13 and inspirational. And yeah, there's going to be people that are going to not like that telling or think that it should have been R and darker and grimier, but that's just not what I felt like in my spirit that I wanted to put out there. And there's still plenty of darkness in the story. It's not like it's like,
So, yeah, that 100%.
it's never not G or PG. I would say it's a hard PG-13. Yeah. And you only get one F-bomb, which we strategically honored that too. You only can say the F word once in a PG-13 with a little inside movie business.
Yeah.
No, but I do. I think you got the emotional truth of the whole story. As I say, I think you've chosen well and how you did that. Um, Going back to you, Emily. Obviously, your physical shape in that film, you clearly put a lot of effort in, and I'm sure, as I say, we could do hours on the routines and the diet and the food thing. But as someone who's been in the ring myself, physical shape's one thing. What about wrestling shape?
Hmm.
How was that
That's,
for you?
yeah. Well, it's funny. It's like muscles, putting on weight and muscle is different than cardio, right? Like you can
Yeah,
meet somebody in the gym who can like, lift, I don't know what's big, like 400 or something like that. That would be big for me. Okay. But they can't run, right? Like they can't go on a
yeah.
kilometer, 2K run. So there's a huge versatility I think you need to have as a wrestler. And not only that, there's a part of the shape that comes in with wrestling, which is performance value. You need to be able to perform in a way that is connecting with the audience. It's different than other sports where your athleticism is your focus or your only focus, I should say. So getting into wrestler persona or body or world is putting all those things together. And that's
Hmm.
you mix that in a pot, and then you have the wrestler.
And how was that for you? Because obviously, like you say, you've obviously done a bit. I believe was it Al Snow you trained with? I'm sure I read that
Yeah,
somewhere. Yeah.
yeah. I had the
I
bet.
mean
I'd
that
say,
man's a Jedi Knight anyway at
yeah,
wrestling. So but for yourself, doing it, and then for most wrestlers, you have a match in front of a crowd, 15, 20 minutes off you go. Now
hmm
I'm imagining, and Ash,
hmm
you can come on this one as well. I'm imagining there were lots of different camera angles and long shots and different shots. So maybe doing the same match, I don't know how many times in a day, maybe a bit more than the average wrestler might just get from one match. How was the wear and tear of all that?
Yeah. I think as an actor, you're used to that. I think it was surprising to some of the wrestlers. I'm sure if you talk to them, that'll be maybe something they can comment on more. But the movie making world it's something you're not knowledgeable about until you're really on set. That's why getting on set such an important thing, because there's all these details that you just learn from being there, which is, much like the camera angles and things. But what happens when you can't get the shot? What happens when the light dies? What happens when there's a noise outside? You're really redoing a lot of things, and, keeping that aliveness, not just for the actors, but the whole crew. Your whole crew needs to be inspired in the liveness of your shot. It is a communal effort to capture magic in a tiny frame behind Video Village. That is, everybody's there for the same reason. And you got to kind of like, it's like a little magic being that comes, and puts it all together, and everyone's like, we did it. And then Ash has to take it for a while and then kind of move all those pieces together, and that's his thing, that's his trauma. But there's
And
getting to wrestle and getting to use your body in the way Mildred dreamed of, to have the freedom to do that, to get to be an actor in 2025. There's just gratitude to get to tell her story, and privilege to be a woman in this world, and to be alongside awesome creators like Ash and our whole crew. Just keeps you going.
man, definitely. And Ash, what was it like for you then? Because you've got these people there performing and wrestling in front of you. I mean, I've never directed a film. I won't pretend to know what that's like. But you've got the film part and you've got the wrestling part. Because it looks like we've having some like Al Snow training as well. I'm imagining you're wanting to get out those wrestling moments spot on. So people watching it. I mean, there's been other films sometimes where you watch something and you go, "Yeah, that's not right," but it looked good. And I imagine, how was that for you to get that realism of the wrestling side of it?
Um, well, I mean, we took some liberties on, not everything specifically is in there is exactly how
Oh yeah,
it would
yeah,
have been in the place and time. We tried to, be as truthful to the era, but also like make something that modern audiences can like follow along and not be kind of taken out of or confused by the wrestling. But we were just really fortunate with OVW and everyone that trained the women locally, along with Emily Stunt Double was fantastic. And then, really taking the risk of stunt casting two wrestlers in acting roles so they could do all their own stunts. I do think with our limitations being like a small independent film, had we not used any real wrestlers in those scenes with all that action and all those stunts, it probably would have been a lot more challenging, and it would have taken a lot more time because you're not having the actor take. And look, Emily did a lot of her own stunts. I mean, Kelly came in at strategic moments, but it wasn't like we were constantly shifting it out. I mean, Emily took plenty of bumps on her body over and over again. But I think our secret weapon was just our stunt coordinator, OVW being local in Louisville, and the fact that Tony and Kaylee were Clara and June. It would have been a lot different if we didn't have OVW locally. If we didn't have real wrestlers, it could have been a lot more challenging and not turned out as well.
Definitely. And it just, I particularly the carnival part, sort of the beginning of the wrestling journey of it. I just like the vibe of all that because, in the books that you read about those sort of days, and it sounds a bit like the Wild West days of wrestling. That was probably one of my favourite parts, actually, how you got all that and when the guy volunteered us and what happens then. I won't ruin it. So. But yeah, no, that was probably one of the main bits for me. I thought that was you did capture that so spot on. It was just really good. And but going back to Mildred then, and we've talked about like her impact and all that. I mean, Mildred Burke passed away in sort of 1989, and even up to that point, her legacy was still kind of she was being mentioned here and there, and she got a legacy induction in different halls of fame and stuff. But you know, she still was kind of the politics of the sport were keeping her away from the spotlight that you've now put her in. I mean, how does that feel to sort of you guys coming into this and the product that you've made, which is shone this big light on her? How does that feel for each of you?
I can take. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Emily.
No, you go first.
I was just gonna say, there's just two moments that come off the top of my head, like just seeing it on a human level. One was Mildred's granddaughter who saw it at the Newport Beach Film Festival, which was like one of the first days anyone saw it, and her reaction that Emily and I both were able to see was just like so touching. You always want to make sure that the family and the people that are related feel good, and she was I mean, I kind of get emotional thinking about it. Like it was a very emotional moment. And then the other one was in St. Augustine at a film festival there. I think it was in November or February. It was still before the movie came out, and there was a single mom who had come with her son to see it, and she was in tears, and like she was in a relationship that was a Billy Wolfe scenario. She wasn't a wrestler, of course, but with her son, and they had finally gotten free and found a new family, but she was just it was just so it landed so emotionally heavy and beautiful for her and her son. So that was another, those are kind of the two outside of any like normal movie business stuff. Like those two human moments of the early screenings were probably what has stuck in my psyche the most.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right, Ash. I think you make art because it inspires you and you hope you can move other people, but you don't always get to see it firsthand. I think rarely actually you get to see it firsthand like that. And it really does come down to, even if just one person is affected, it's all worth it. But like, it makes it meaningful, and it makes, because Mildred was a person, a real person, it makes her whole life even more meaningful. And there was, I think even the first time, I saw it with people in a theater, there was like a feeling I got where it's like, oh, everything, like, not like everything's done, but like everything is okay now. Like this has made its mark the way it's supposed to. And that was kind of like, there was like a settling, like an acceptance of it all. And I don't think that's the journey with all film and art. At least it hasn't been my experience before. And yeah, the meaning behind it is just so magical.
So that kind of leads on to my next question. Again, mainly for you, Emily, but again, same for you, Ash. Was there a moment during the filming of this or in the making of it that you were like, that moment where you were like, yeah, I've got Mildred now, or now that synergy come together and you're like, yeah, this is it. I've got this now. Was there a moment for you in that?
There were two. On a sheer like acting and performance for Emily was because when you're making movies, unless you're like a really big studio movie, you don't get the luxury of like shooting chronologically, so you just have to shoot in whatever order is going to be best for like the budget and the crew and moving and making your days and your schedule. So you're shooting totally random of like where you're at in the story. And early on, it was a shoot. It was the scene where Mildred's in the mirror and after she's been very badly beaten by Billy, and she's explaining to her mother and her son why she's not going to call the cops, even though the audience is thinking like this guy's got to go to jail. Her family's thinking that like we want to see justice, and she's explaining why she's not going to, which I think is one of the most. It was one of the most powerful parts in the book, and also in the movie we ended up making. I think it's one of the most powerful moments from a performance and from a storytelling perspective, and it's still something today that I think a lot of women have gone through it, and they've chosen not to have a stain on their legacy after they become famous, even though they may have gone through some very dark things in the entertainment business. But the reason Mildred gives, I don't want to spoil it all. You have to watch the movie. We've already kind of given away enough with Billy, being an abuser. But it's a very fine line to not go full into melodrama, not to like fully take the audience out of the story, and to still be rooting for this woman and identifying and relating to what she's saying and believing that she really is this woman and she's saying that. And I remember when Emily started doing the takes, I was like, oh, fucking thank God. Because if that part doesn't work, it kind of fucks up the entire movie, and she nailed it. We had multiple takes to choose from, and I was just like, I'm gonna have my pick of the litter in the edit. This is gonna be great. And that was like, whew. Okay. I was actually relieved that we shot it early because I was like, we need to make sure this works. Because so that was on the performance. And then on the like sports movie of it all was when we were shooting the ending. And it was again, this is one of these things I'll remember till the day I die. My son was with us. He actually plays Mildred's son. So he's like a year and like 3 months. And he had been like on set and like watching Video Village, and I was, trying to be as present as a dad as I could while, directing. And I remember we were in Video Village and we were watching, the ending wrestling match, and he was seeing all the moves and the stunts and the final fight of it all. And he just starts like clapping, like he was like so into it. And I'm like, and the thing about little kids, whether it's like music or like art or whatever, they have like nothing to like, they're not like, they're not poisoned by society yet or like, have all these things. They're just like so honest and bare. And I actually like love testing songs on kids because like if they like it, they're not thinking of anything else. Either they like it or not. And it's the same thing with like visuals and like performance. And he was just, I remember how, he doesn't know to clap. He's never been to a wrestling match. He doesn't know what it is. And he was just going. And I'm like, that's how I feel. I feel like this, So that's the other part of the film that I'm just so proud of, because I do think, regardless of however you want to criticize and tear apart, the movie, as everyone in art does, it's all subjective, right? Some people love it. Some people think it's rushed. Some people think it's too much. Some think it's too little, whatever. But I would say that the two things, in my opinion, and we read everything. We read everything that's out there. The two things I think that I'm the most proud of on a filmmaking standpoint is my lead actor's performance because it is the Mildred story. So thank you, Emily. And the ending, you know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The ending was magic to film. Like we shot it at the end. It was actually pretty much chronological for that tiny part of it, but it was 3 days of shooting, and our background actors were so into it all night, all 3 nights in a row, and their energy did not waver, did not die, made that audience exactly how it was, and it was like being in a small black box theater. It was practically what it was. So we were like in a moment in time. It's like we had Mildred's moment, and it's like we had just extracted a piece of history. Like it's almost indescribable. And after the first day of doing that, you kind of go home and you're like, okay, that was magic. And you step right back in the next day. It's like no time has passed. And it's like you stop time. When that type of magic starts to happen, you're controlling time. It's so interesting with that type of art form. I don't actually know if I had a feeling if I ever felt like I had Mildred, but I had like moments where I felt like she was visiting set in a sense. Like there was like some sort of spirit of something that like we couldn't describe. Just like a piece of something like, okay, today, this is how today's energy is going to go. And I think now looking back on the kind of motor I felt all through shooting, I think I might recognize in the future with future parts, but I didn't with this one, as that was her heartbeat. Like I almost felt like I had the chugging the entire time we were shooting, on or off set. And so that'll be something I take as a part of process and sort of investigation for future characters.
That
The
was
other thing
kind
I
of
would say,
concept.
what Emily was saying about the audience in the end, because it was all local Kentucky, background actors and a lot of people that hadn't ever been on a movie set or done it.
Yes.
So it's so fresh and exciting. It was very, just kind of symbolic and serendipitous with real pro wrestling matches, especially when there's like a main event or there's like a match with a big storyline and there's this really big expectation of the athletes and the performers, the pro wrestlers to like deliver. And because they were so into it, just like in a real like main event, or in any match really that they're connected to the audience, like the actors were feeding off of that. So it would like Emily and Kaylee were just able, I think to a certain level, like keep going because we shot a lot because every take it was like, we need to feel the audience, we need to feel them. And they were so in it with us. So it really was like, we were really, really lucky to have such an amazing local group of people that were just loved being on a movie set. It really helped the performances, I think. And just the like endurance and the, we got to go again, like, cheer, it was really, really special.
No, it comes across on the screen, all that. You can see all that. As I say, my final question for both of you then, again, in a thank you for bringing someone, Mildred Burke, to the mainstream audience, someone who's been sort of pushed away by everyone else. You finally, I think, in a way, that it's almost like a comeback against everyone else now, if that makes sense. But what would you say what part of Mildred would you say will stay with you, and what can we learn from her?
I think the power in your dream is something that stays with me. She was in her bliss. It's funny, her last name was Bliss, but she followed her quote unquote bliss, and she believed in it. She believed in herself enough to keep going no matter what. And like when she was told no, she'd just be like, okay, pivot. She wasn't like, no, collapse. She was like, no, I'll just take the bump and get back up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in a lot of circumstances, especially when you're trying to achieve goals and dreams, like there's usually two distinct voices. There's the one inside of you that you want to do something. And then there's like the world that's like, yeah, it's never going to happen. Like, and you can either choose to listen to the world or listen to yourself and see what happens. And Mildred just continued to listen to herself instead of listen to, society telling us that women should wrestle. You're never going to draw money. It's not going to be legal, all those things. And she just kept doing it because it meant that much to her and she believed in herself. So I know it's the age old cliche, like believe in yourself, keep going, but there's a reason it gets said, and it's a theme that, people will continue to put in, I think, stories from the start of time till the end of time, because it's just part of the human experience. Um, if you really want something, you have to want it more than anything else, and be willing to go, as hard as it
Yeah.
is. And there's still no guarantees, but at least, when you're on your deathbed, you can look back and be like, I gave it my all, instead of, passing with regret, which I feel like is like all of our worst nightmares.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Now, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. It's been very much appreciated, and wish you more success as the film continues to track out across the world. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Brett. Thanks for having us. Have a great day.
Thank you once again to Ash and Emily for joining us this week on the Grapple of Your Eyes show. Just as a reminder, The Queen of the Ring will be in select UK cinemas from the 19th of September and will be on demand from the 13th of October. So do go and check that out. It's definitely one that is worth a watch. Now, as we look ahead to another week, we will be back with another guest. But in the meantime, if you want to keep up to date with everything that we're doing, you can check out the grappleofyoureye.com, which is our mothership with everything on there, all our past episodes and all our links and everything. New episodes drop every Thursday at 7 a.m. UK time. You can check out the video episodes on YouTube, and audio episodes are available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Podcasts, and all the other podcast apps and things that are out there. If you do listen to us on those, please give us a like and a review and a subscribe. They really do help us out, and the more that you can do that, the higher we can appear on those charts. So it is a big ask, I know, to spend a couple of minutes to do that, but it really is appreciated. If you want to keep up with everything we're doing, you can look at us on Instagram, Facebook, and all the other social medias that are out there, but they're our main ones. And yeah, I've been Brett Summers, your host this week, and we will be back next week with another exciting guest. So stay safe and stay on the mats.
I tend to tell people, from an amateur wrestler to a professional wrestler to a cage fighter to being the alpha male of senior citizens now.
I would definitely recommend BJJ. I say quite frequently, I think it's really helped Clay. It's given him some structure, it's given him discipline, and also, but probably the most important thing, it's given him a routine. I mean, with the training, he knows where we're going to be, what day. He goes into the same gym or the same gyms now, because he trains at different gyms. And yeah, it's helped him. It's built relationships with his peers. He's got great friends. He's got some great role models in the gyms that he trains at, with not only the coaches but all the adults that are there. And it's just a great environment. It took me by surprise. It wasn't what I expected when we first walked into a gym.
And it's interesting in that there are a number of tournaments that are promised and organized with the Future Federation. And in one of them, there's a clause there will be tournaments with strikes involved, but they will be held under different regulation. And I saw that, and I completely missed that the first time I read that document, right? I'm going, holy cow. I think that our forefathers, our founding fathers, they had the wisdom to see that a competition rule was going to drift away from the reality of combat. and that a rule set with strike was necessary in order to maintain that foot in reality.
When I qualified for the Olympic Games and being the first female in wrestling for New Zealand, I think that really took the cake. I think that was the best feeling ever, and I think about it often still, and it still makes me feel really good.